VHS Files contains spoilers, adult content, and harsh language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's showtime. It's showtime.
Welcome to the VHS Files Podcast with Jenny Lou,
So what do you want to do tonight?
Jason,
What about pizza and movie night?
Eric,
I want to rent a movie.
and Josh.
I want to go to a good video store so I can get a good movie.
And this is the movie of the week.
Let's get this pizza movie night started.
Happy 2021.
Holy shit.
We made it.
We did it.
Holy shit.
Nobody breathed too hard.
Yeah. We made it through 2020, everyone. Give ourselves a round of applause. Hopefully 2021 is going to be a whole lot better than 2020 was.
We're just a little better.
Just a
Just
little.
a little better would be
Just-
fine.
Take a little smidge. A little smidge.
I mean, whatever we can get.
Right. Did everybody have a good Christmas? Our last episode came out on Christmas.
That's right,
So we
yeah.
hadn't
Christmas was
celebrated
good.
yet. So how did everybody's Christmas go? Ours was pretty good here. How about you, Eric?
Small, at home.
Yep.
Which I enjoy anyway. So, yeah, it was good. We didn't get to see all the family we wanted to see, but
I don't
But
think a lot of
we-
people
we
got
did
to
all
see
right.
a lot of the family they wanted to see in 2020, but we
No.
also did the same thing. We actually had people over to our house for the holiday this time, which we've never done before. So I felt
Yep.
a little older this year. Let's just go ahead and kick right into this bad boy.
The movie of the week.
First movie of 2021 for VHS Files is Die Hard.
Die Hard.
Die-
Probably,
Hard. Not the battery
I'm-
commercials.
I'm hard for Die Hard because
I am too.
it's probably a top 3 movie for me.
It's probably the best action movie ever made, in my opinion.
It's hard to argue that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue that.
And this movie was directed by John McTiernan, came out July 15th, 1988. McTiernan had previously worked on a movie called Nomads and Predator, which also was a fantastic action movie from the 80s, which we will eventually talk about on this show. But he would go on after this to work on The Hunt for Red October, Last Action Hero. He would also come back to do the third Die Hard film, Die Hard with a Vengeance. And he also directed the remake of Rollerball and the John Travolta movie Basic a little later on.
We don't need to get into that.
Yeah.
We need to mention Basic.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people know about it. I didn't even know John McTiernan directed it until we started doing research for this. Die Hard had a budget of 25 to 35 million, not really a solid number there. They kind of go a little back and forth, but ended up doing a box office of about 139 to 141 million dollars. A little bit about the backstory to this movie is it had the rights sold for the book to be adapted to a movie, I think back in the 70s. Originally, this movie had Frank Sinatra tied to it for the lead
Yep.
role.
Strange.
Seems very weird now thinking about it. Offered this role of John McClane was offered to Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, all the big action movie stars at the time. This movie ended up not really going the way anybody expected. They wanted a big time action star. They got Bruce Willis. At the time, he was only known for really the TV show Moonlight. It was released amongst the likes of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, one of my favorite childhood movies.
Yeah.
Coming to America, one of my favorite Eddie Murphy movies. A Fish Called Wanda. The Japanese anime Akira was released around this same time. Pippi Longstocking,
Oh, I love Pippi.
one of Jenny's favorite childhood movies. And the Tom Cruise movie Cocktail, which I've only seen once,
good.
surprisingly. So I'd love to revisit it and kind of get back to it at some point on this show, which I'm sure we will. But until then, Eric, take us back in time to 1988.
We're sending you back.
Whoa, this is heavy.
Well, Josh, Quentin Tarantino had a cameo appearance as an Elvis impersonator in 1988 episode of The Golden Girls, oddly enough.
I feel like I knew that, but I seem shocked by that now.
It's a weird thing. Doppler radar was invented. Hey, what do we want? High-speed Doppler effect, cat drive-by noises. When do we want them? Meow.
territory.
DC ran a phone poll asking viewers to vote whether or not Batman's sidekick Robin should live or die.
Wow.
There were only 10,614 votes were tallied. 5,343 in favor, 5,271 in favor of his surviving, a margin of only 72 votes, thus the killing of Jason Todd.
Wow.
Kind of interesting. And then since we're here in the VHS files, we cherish the video store era. Let's take a look at a commercial from 1988. Hit it, Josh.
Nobody has the movie I want.
Hey, if it's on video, Blockbuster probably has it. I mean, we have over 10,000 videos.
Wow.
I'll watch these fast and come back tomorrow, I promise. Relax, at Blockbuster you can keep
This
your
man has a
videos
trench
for
coat
20
on.
evenings, so take home plenty. And use our 24-hour...
What kind of videos he's
Do you
getting?
have any children's videos?
Sure. Blockbuster's America's family video store. You know, we have more kids' videos than any place else. Hey, more movies, more nights, more fun.
Blockbuster
More fun.
What a difference.
Miss it so
Wow.
much.
Anyway,
I didn't even know those commercials existed. I don't think I've ever seen that one.
I don't
before.
remember that one. No.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and talk about any kind of childhood nostalgia or early life nostalgia for Die Hard. Probably don't really think any of us saw this in the theater, but I do have a story about my first watch on this. I used to live in a particular neighborhood that wasn't close to any sort of grocery store or like a big place where a movie rental place would be or anything like that. So we had a local grocery store that used to rent videos, and they had a little section in the front of the grocery store. I remember distinctly there are a few movies from that time where I would ride my bike to that grocery store and they let me rent movies from there. And Child's Play was one of them. Charlotte's Web was another one that we'll talk about eventually. And Die Hard was one of these movies that I got at this place. And this was another one kind of in the same vein. Like I saw this around the same time as Home Alone, which we talked about last week. And this was another one that somehow just me and my mom and my stepdad, and we all got together and watched this movie together and marveled at how good this little known action movie called Die Hard was. I remember from that moment forward, this movie was cemented in my brain, and it has never left my scope from that moment forward. So this is a big movie for me. It kind of, I was always into action movies. I was always into Schwarzenegger, Stallone, all of that kind of stuff. And this just seemed very unlikely that I would be very into it because, again, we just talked about Bruce Willis, who I'd never really seen before, came in here and just sort of overtook this movie. And it was an action movie I'd never seen before because the hero was so vulnerable.
Yeah, a star was born here, for sure.
And one thing I found out that was pretty interesting is he was paid $5 million to do the part, which was unprecedented at this time, especially for an unknown. That was like what they would offer Schwarzenegger or Stallone for a role at this time. And he came in fairly a TV star getting that salary, which I thought was pretty interesting. But we see where it got Bruce Willis today. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've got my opinions about where Bruce Willis is nowadays, but at that point, it cemented Bruce Willis in the action category for sure.
So you were little Kevin McAllister at the grocery store, renting rated R movies. Huh?
Yeah, I was.
They didn't ask.
It's so weird because they had no problem with me going in there and renting stuff. Yeah, like I said, Child's Play, horror movies, Interview with a Vampire was one of the movies I remember getting from there. And
wow,
so this is around the time when I really was like super into movies. It wasn't just that I was watching them on TV and mom was bringing them home. Like I was at the point where I was interested in renting movies and watching movies. So, Eric, you got any fond early memories of Die Hard, or was it a later one for you?
Yeah. Well, this movie, I remember it. My first memory of this movie is from before I was allowed to watch it. This is the first R-rated movie I wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And I was not allowed to watch. It was the first time I actually encountered, because I was just a little kid and kids, parents were like, oh, that's not for kids. And you go, okay, but this was the first one. My cousins were watching it. I was very close to my cousins. We were hanging out at their house. They were watching it. It was rated R and I wasn't allowed to watch it. And I was so disappointed. I don't remember exactly how I responded to that disappointment. I think I was just super bummed, but I remember that cover, that box art with, you know, his side of his face and the towers, and just like, that looks so cool. And I wanted to watch it so bad. But this is one of my favorite movies, period. My favorite action movie, I think, is safe to say. And yeah, I mean, gosh, what can you say? I've seen it as many times as probably any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I love this movie.
It's a staple in our household. It's every time around this time of year. I'll make an argument for Christmas. I'll make an argument for any time of the year for Die Hard is a great time for Die Hard. Jenny, what are your first memories?
I don't really have any childhood memories of this movie because I definitely would not have been allowed to see it.
But your dad was a big action movie guy.
Yep.
I feel like he would have been watching it or something.
If he did, I wasn't allowed to because I would have been 6 when this came out. I was watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Pippi Longstocking. Like, this has way too many F-bombs, way too much violence.
Right.
So I really am fuzzy on when Die Hard came into my life. But it is also my favorite action movie. Yeah.
And speaking of the R rating, I watched this movie with my kids.
I wanted to ask you about that. Back. Well, a few years back. Well, you said you watched it with your kids this time. So, you know, first time and this time, like, how is it watching it with the kids? Like,
well, I watched it with my kids a few years back, and they were, you know, late elementary, early middle, I would say, school. And I remembered all the naked parts. You know, that was really the main issue for me as a parent, was like the topless scene. And then there's a calendar later in the film. And they're this time brief. When we very brief. Very brief. But this time when they were watching it with me, and they're, you know, 15 and 17 now, they were laughing at me because they remember that I forgot the second pass by the calendar, because he passes by it twice, right? He walks by it once and he looks at it, and then the second time he like, but yeah, so they were making fun of me for that, but they like it. What's not to like, man? It's a great movie.
I'm curious as to, like, you know, you've got teenagers, and, you know, we're all well into our 30s, and I'm in my 40s now, and just how someone of a young age would accept a movie like this now. And, you know, there's tropes about it that are definitely cemented in the 80s era, which I think would make it seem a little awkward for someone watching it at a young age nowadays, not really knowing the technology or whatever. And, or even the comedy in this. Like, I kind of feel like a person of a younger age might not really get some of the comedic beats this hits, or even some of the references it makes a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they understand the references to old Westerns and things like that so much. But it's such a, it's almost timeless because it's a single location movie. They don't get too much into the culture of things. It's you know, you got some different clothes and technology limitations that we don't have now. But, you know, there's computers. Yeah. You know, it's pretty basic. You're in a building. They enjoy it. And I think part of that, one thing that hurts watching movies with younger viewers is pacing.
Oh yeah.
You know, a lot of older movies are paced a little slower, and the modern viewer is not used to that.
Yeah.
But Die Hard, I think, has great pacing. So it keeps you moving from start to finish, and there's no real lulls to worry about.
It's a little over 2 hours long, and I mean, it barrels through that 2 hours, and you by the time you're done with this movie, you don't feel like you've been watching a 2-hour movie, which is
no, not at all. Which
is funny because while it does barrel through, it takes its time to do great character development. And we'll go ahead and start getting into all of that. I do want to play the trailer because this is probably something we might have saw as a kid, and that might have, you know, like Eric said, sparked your interest in seeing the movie box or watching the trailer. So I want to do this real quick, and we won't watch the whole thing because it's kind of long, but I kind of want to get into a little bit of it.
It's Christmas Eve in L.A., California.
Is Daddy coming home soon? Well, we'll see what Santa and Mommy can do, okay?
And New York cop John McClane has come to see his wife.
I missed you.
Instead, he's going to have to save her.
Sit down.
Within this skyscraper high above the city, 12 terrorists have declared war.
They're about to be taught a lesson in the real use of power.
They're as brilliant.
Because I am interested in the $640 million in your vault.
As they are ruthless.
But I'm telling you, you just have to kill. Okay. We do it the hard way.
Now, the last thing McClane wants.
Think, damn it, think.
Is to be a hero.
Where's Holly? Hey, Tucker! Where?
But he doesn't have a choice.
What does he think he's doing?
So it already brings up a lot of good points that make this movie great, in my opinion. But yeah, it does give a little bit away in that trailer. However, I'm not sure if this would have been the trailer you would have saw going into this movie back in '88. This is one that was, pulled off YouTube and whatnot. It still seems like it's got all the classic trailer stuff in it. But from the moment this movie starts, it just kind of throws you into our scenario. You're on the plane with John. And whereas nowadays we get all this exposition through movies, I won't get too deep into it, but I just watched Tenet for the first time and talk about exposition dumps in movies. This movie is one of the rare occasions where exposition comes so naturally that you really don't even notice you're getting exposition throughout some of this movie. And the beginning of this is case in point, where they're talking about him being afraid of flying, and the guy's telling him, he's flown a lot, and he says the key to flying is getting back, taking your shoes off, walking around on the carpet, and making fists with your toes. The look Bruce Willis has on his face when this guy tells him this is classic. And you can tell he just thinks this guy is giving him a line. But just the smallest thing like that they set up comes back in this movie.
Yeah.
It's just like we talked about in our conversation between, about Back to the Future, where this movie is another one where everything that it shows to you is a setup for something that's going to come back later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's really no wasted lines. There's really no wasted scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Everything ties to something else. Everything's there for a reason.
Right.
And that's why the pacing feels great, because everything matters and you just move right through it.
Yeah. And we go from that to,
Has anybody ever tried making fists with their toes
have.
as like a method?
I'm doing it right now, Jenny.
But as a means to ground yourself after travel.
I don't travel enough for that. Although I did get on a really long flight one time and my legs inflated a little bit. So you got to wiggle your toes and move around a little bit to get that out of there. But yeah, I don't know. As far as like jet lag and stuff like that, I don't know.
I don't know if I ever tried it directly because of that. I do remember my first plane ride, this popping into my head, at least. I don't know if I got back to the hotel and made fists with my toes. I'm sure as a kid watching this, I was like, I would just start making fists with my toes on the carpet. So another thing that's back in the 80s, that's like smoking in the airport, smoking everywhere in all of these 80s movies.
Well, how about after that conversation with that guy, he stands up and he's got his gun on him on the plane.
Would he have been allowed
"Oh, it's
to
okay.
have that?
I'm a cop," but it's like, dude, you're a cop from New York. You're on a plane.
Like, even at that point in the 80s, would that have been allowed?
I don't think it would have.
Idea.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I
if
mean,
you're an air marshal, yeah,
right.
but not just a cop.
I mean, is it do they do that kind of thing where they allow cops to kind of be an air marshal for a flight from time to time? Like that could explain part of it. But yeah, I found that a little off a little bit too. Is I don't know if he would be able to have a gun on a plane even back in the 80s, because even conceal and carry, I believe, is specific to the state you're in. So even though he's a cop in New York, he has no business having a firearm on him in Los Angeles.
Sure, he's out of his jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we cut to the Nakatomi building where his wife is working. He's there to visit his wife. We hear all.
She's
this.
working on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, everybody in this place. Well, I don't.
Well, no, they're partying. She's working. She's still got
working.
papers.
And they do a good job of explaining to you exactly who she is within this company. She's made her way throughout. She's a fierce little cat in this business, and she's made her name in the Nakatomi building.
She's high up.
She's a high up.
Holly Gennaro.
Right. And we get our introduction to Mr. Takagi, who's the owner of the business, and how much he really regards Holly as an integral part of that business. We're introduced to Ellis, who will come back to this movie for lots of good reasons.
Dude, Ellis, the picture of Ellis smiling after he gives his pitch, that classic photo of him smiling. That's been my avatar photo on my PlayStation.
Like with him with the glass in his mouth?
Profile. No, not the awkward Jesse Pinkman drink. It's when he's just kind of smiling, like,
right.
Like he's like, booby baby, and he's smiling. Anyway, that's been my profile image since like PlayStation 3. We're talking years and years, way back.
Right.
He is a favorite of mine. He slays me. He's so goddamn funny.
He's very good in this. He's very cocky. He is the right person for the part, for sure.
Yeah.
He's hysterical, and in this beginning introduction, we see that he's hitting on Holly big time. I mean, he wants her to come to his apartment. He's ready to go. Like, he's really laying out thick. He gave her a Rolex.
Yeah,
as we learn.
So
he's making his.
I don't know if they make that clear that was from him being part of the deal they brokered, or if it was a gift from the Takagi.
That's true. Yeah,
I
guess.
I think
it could have been either. They don't. Yeah, they don't say.
He just says it's a token of the hard work that she had put in and all that good stuff. But again, I love that he brings it up. Show him the watch, and
because he's like someone who cares about those things. He wants to brag about status and all the things that he can get with it. So he thinks everybody else wants to hear about that.
Well,
he wants to belittle John.
Yeah.
They look at all this great stuff she's getting because she's here with me, not with you.
Right. Well, it also goes to show you just how much that Ellis really isn't paying attention and isn't as interested as he seems to be in Holly, because he wouldn't be asking her out on Christmas Eve if he really knew, like, I'm a mother of two. I have 2 kids. I've got to be with my family on Christmas Eve. And he's like, no, come out and party with me, and let's go to dinner, and come back to my place. So, he's interested in her, but he's not interested in her by any means. We kind of see who John is. He's a very simple police officer from New York. He's in California, out of his element. Fucking California. He says it multiple times in the movie. I don't know where his disdain. I think in the 80s there was this big like cultural difference between East and West Coast, and
definitely, yeah. I mean, and I think it's all about telling us he's an everyman. He's not a Hollywood. He's not like they're telling us right now. This isn't your normal action star. This is an everyman, and most of his decisions and situations reflect that. This is like a normal guy.
Yeah.
And
they give you a silent exposition in things too, because he's been separated from his wife for 6 months. They're not in a great place, and as he's getting off the plane, he sees this very attractive stewardess, and they kind of lock eyes. His eyes float to a pretty young lady in the airport. And you can tell he's at a point where it's like, okay, I either need my family back, or he's like confused as to where he's at in his life right now. And I think he's a little too proud to admit that he was wrong and his wife is doing better than he is at this point in time.
Well,
he's the classic slave to the job.
Yeah. And he just doesn't understand like the climbing the ladder of success. He's, there to be a cop and to,
make a difference.
Yeah, make a difference, do good. And
he wants to take down the bad guys.
And she's, gotta, I don't really know what they do, but
they're developers. It
yeah,
seems,
so it's high-powered, money-driven, big dollars.
Well, they're into some things that would make it very likely that a terrorist organization would be into some of the things they're doing, or maybe the front they are. So
they're developing projects in different countries and things like that. So you're going to run into all kinds of political issues.
So at the airport, we get introduced to Argyle, the limo driver. Argyle is a great addition to this. Yeah. It gives you a little more kind of, he's a lively character, whereas nowadays, if they were bringing John in, or that you had somebody like Argyle, like I don't think they would have someone like Argyle in a movie like like now, and John would not be fleshed out the way he is in the first 10 minutes of this movie.
They're both blue collar.
Yep.
He doesn't want to sit in the back and be treated as higher than Argyle. He sits and he talks to Argyle immediately, and they hit it off. It shows that John is in touch with the average Joe, you know, which frankly, as a viewer, is refreshing at that time, especially, you know, when we're used to insane bodybuilders being our action stars, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
He has essentially a dad bod in this movie. I mean, I think every guy in the world like watches this movie and goes, I could do that. He can do it. I can do it. I don't have to look like freaking Mr. Universe. You know what I mean?
And I'm so glad they went with that in this movie, because it's another part of it that just cements it as so solid. Because I mean, it grounds it in a way to where it's almost, I mean, like, it's believable that all this could happen and this guy could potentially do all of this. Does he want to do all of it? No, he blatantly does not want to be doing it. We get into that later in the movie.
Again, the best part is, or maybe not the best part, but a great part of the whole thing is that he tries his best to avoid all of this through the whole beginning. He doesn't just do body paint all over his body and load all his guns and head out the door. Like, he's not a willing participant until he has to be.
Exactly.
Which again grounds it. That's how a normal person would react.
And I like that even though he and Argyle are two very different people, they establish that, but they are able to talk to one another and have an understanding, even so much so that Argyle realizes, hey, you're in a tough spot right now. You don't know where this is going to go. I'm going to hang out. I'll help you out. And if you strike out, I'll be in the garage. We'll get you some place to stay. So he says it himself. He's going for a good tip on this, but he's bonded with him in a way that it's like, okay, I'll help you out. You and me, we're on a level together. And and
you get some Run DMC there.
Yeah.
Christmas music.
And he says, put some Christmas music. This is Christmas music.
Right. And something strikes me is I don't really think John McClane would be your Christmas music kind of guy, but I could be off base there.
He was just trying to change the subject.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? He didn't like all the personal questions.
So now we've gotten to Nakatomi, and we're pretty much there from this point forward. We venture out a couple of times. I love when John has the exchange with the guy at the front, tells him to put the name in the computer. You'll find whoever you're looking for there.
Yeah, and he doesn't like the technology.
He is not on with the technology.
Yeah, which that has been. I mean, I don't know if this is the origin of that in film, but I'm sure that's been done many times over the years. But I feel like that's almost a staple of like the everyman hero nowadays. I feel like John McClane set a standard, and you know, you get a lot of movies now where people don't like technology and that sort of, you know.
Well, I think the thing with John is he comes from a time where technology was not how you got things done, not how you did things.
He doesn't like the bullshit.
Right. Just cut to the chase.
Cut to the chase.
Yeah. Well, you know, the computer is just a device to tell you that she's using her maiden name.
Yeah.
Because as soon as he finds her, then he's like, oh yeah, they're the only people in the building. Just go right up. Like, he couldn't have just wandered in there and be like, well, there's only one set of, you know, only one office is open. So just
he made him go through the sign-in process.
Right.
Even though everyone's on one floor.
Well,
you're right. I mean, and that's the great thing about the information that we get here is it's all put together relatively cleverly. We learn that there. We don't have to wait for her to tell him or someone else to tell him. He just naturally looks it up. It's okay. We get it. She's using her maiden name. That tells us a lot.
Mm-hmm. And just the look on his face when he finally finds her name.
It tells us what he feels about that. He's surprised by it. It tells us that she's, you know, where she's at mentally, where he's at mentally.
And that's another good thing about the conversation between he and Argyle. Argyle picks up on that he even says it, you know, you're fast, Argyle. He figures all that out just from a little bit of conversation they have. So we get up into the building. He finally meets Takagi, runs into some more Californians. He meets Takagi. They take him. He meets Ellis. And I love when he comes into Holly's office and Ellis is there. doing blow on the desk.
Yeah. You missed some.
Yeah, you missed some. But that's when we get the exchange about the watch and all of this stuff. And you can tell, as much as he's stricken by them being apart right now, like when Holly walks into the room, you can tell that she's feeling the same way. She hasn't seen him in 6 months. You can see from the look on her face and her body language that she's happy to see him. And she wants things to work, but how stubborn is my husband? You know, like how
and yeah, and she at this point wasn't sure if he was going to make it. She pretty much figured he wasn't going to make it, so she was surprised to see him as well. But yeah, she seems to still have feelings for him.
But even the conversation that she has with her housekeeper about making up the spare bedroom, you know, even watching this as a kid, you're like, why would they have a spare bedroom for her husband? Like, I found that weird even back then. Again, it tells the story without hitting you over the head with it. And then you get your exchange. I mean, as all of this is going on, you're getting background of, you know, this approaching truck coming towards the building. But we get to our conversation that really cements where their relationship is at. And I love the dialogue and the exchange. It seems very natural. They seem like they are a married couple that are having problems. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like acting watching it for me.
It is a very natural argument, and it's quick. We don't have to sit there and listen to them argue forever, and it doesn't get super dramatic. It is very quick, like an argument often is. Mm-hmm. And it seems like an argument they've had 100 times already, which is what makes it feel authentic, because that's how arguments go in marriages, where you have the same argument over and over and over. And it all feels very natural, and everything's brought bare right there again. Yeah. Like it's about my needs, your needs, and they don't fit, and it's not working. And she has to go give a speech.
So much so that I love when her secretary comes in and interrupts them talking. And even there, Bruce Willis, his body language and the look on his face and the way he just goes hi to the secretary when she interrupts them is like, you can tell how frustrated he is and how much he's probably just made a complete fool of himself and put himself in a bad situation with his wife from the moment he's been there. You know?
He just traveled across the entire country to see her and probably try to patch things up, and he's already arguing like within minutes.
Yeah.
And I like that he's in this private bathroom in the office. He's washing up. He's been on this long flight. It establishes this. One of the best things about this movie for me is the idea of making your hero as vulnerable as possible. Mm-hmm. Yep. He has no shoes on. He has a pistol. That's it. He does not have an arsenal at his disposal. He literally is like a guy in a video game having to collect things as he goes and use them as the best he can. So the fact that they got all of this going within the first 15 minutes of the movie, you know, you've already found out so much, but you're barreling along and you don't feel like you've been dumped on with all of this information that you've got to process. You're naturally following along with where this is going.
Yep. And it doesn't take long to get to the break-in, or you know, whatever you would call it, the attack, or you get to it pretty quick.
And I like our first exchange when we have Carl and Theo pull up in the car in the front of the building as the truck pulls into the parking garage. Even the way they come into the building, Carl's silent. You can tell that Theo is the guy that's going to move this along, and so much so to where they get to the desk and you got Theo with the bill 2 points. You know, he's talking about the basketball game and he shoots the guy. Like, it all just, I don't know how much rewrites this movie had. Apparently they did rewrite quite a bit of things from the original script. It's one of these that you can tell that the rewrites probably helped it more than hurt it.
Well, the way that they enter and that he shoots the guard is so callous, and it's just brutal, and it's
methodical and efficient. It's not, there's no rage, there's no there's no bloodlust. It's just careless. Like, not careless, but they don't care about
it's just a thing they have to do.
Yeah.
Right. It's simply an obstacle. They just kill the guy. It's not some dramatic death. It's just, that guy's dead now. Put him away. Mm-hmm. He's just a body to hide under the desk or in the closet.
And and
it makes them feel like a real threat.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting, like, as you go on and you meet all the characters, Theo's like the computer guy.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think like the computer guy would be like the cold-blooded killer.
Right.
You know, in a lot of other movies, when you have these different dynamics, you got the muscle, you got the brains, you got the tech guy, and they don't always
the tech guy's
cross
usually
over.
not comfortable with violence.
Yeah, he's just there to like do the job and get the money and turn the other way. But he's in it right away.
They're all cold-blooded, that whole group. And hey, props to 1988 for making such a diverse group of terrorists.
Yeah.
We've got guys from all races and creeds on this terrorist group.
This might be the most diverse 80s movies we've watched yet.
All of the introductions to these, well, we're calling them terrorists because they are labeled terrorists, and they're really just thieves.
Yep.
They're thieves.
That's the other thing that I really love that they hammer home about this movie. I'm glad that we're talking about Theo a lot too, because I've always been so intimidated by Carl because he's this strong, silent type guy, but you see how he goes after John kills his brother. Even Alan Rickman, like once you get Hans Gruber into the shit, he can pick up a gun and handle himself. You never really see that from Theo, but I almost find Theo scarier than any of the other terrorists in this because he's so callous about everything that happens. Even Carl shows emotion when his brother dies. Like Theo is stone-faced and making jokes.
Theo's like a sociopath.
Yeah.
He's just having fun. He doesn't care. He doesn't. I mean, I guess he's pretty happy when they get the money, but he doesn't. He's pretty much just having a good time.
And the fact that Theo is one of the like 2 or 3 bad guys in this that make it out alive blows me away. Originally, they did have a scene where Theo was taken out by John, but that's something that they did rewrite and cut differently. I also want to bring up the score in this movie. Michael Kamen. This whole thing, like it builds so much, and I really love. At certain parts of it, you've got this very low cello of the Christmas song underlying all of this, or it's "Ode to Joy." Like you can just hear the bass strings playing it at certain dark moments, and then at the end when they get into the vault, it opens up and becomes the whole orchestral piece.
And at really peaking moments of action and things like that, or thrilling moments, I guess I'll say. They're not always action. Maybe there was somebody's killed or something, but when it just has that like brow, it's just like whoa, like just like hits, and it gets you going. It
knows when to play it quiet and when to bring up the excitement of all of it. So we're introduced to Alan Rickman here, and this is where this movie opens the floodgates with just charisma. And
it opens some floodgates.
Wow.
My goodness. We got an Alan Rickman fan.
Oh God. I mean, I could just listen to him talk.
His voice is amazing.
Anything else in this movie?
What blows me away about him and his performance in this movie, I think this was his first like major film. I think he had been in theater, and I believe they had other people in the running for this part, but he got it. And oh my God, like you talk about Bruce Willis being a star, like how Alan Rickman didn't get every freaking job in Hollywood after this, I don't know. Like he is one of the best villains I've ever seen.
It's great.
Period. And I think that says a lot about this movie, because some movies give you an amazing protagonist and some movies give you an amazing antagonist. And this movie gives you both.
Yes.
That are coming off of not a whole lot and come out and just explode. And their chemistry together is amazing as well. I mean, they don't spend a lot of time on screen together, but they're so different.
Yeah. They are yin and yang, and it works in the best ways possible in this movie. And I love that they don't have a lot of face time in this. what you really get between their relationship is how they're pecking at each other through all of this.
Yeah, it's very clear that they're the two smartest guys in the building, basically, as far as strategy goes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, they're playing a chess game and throughout a lot of this.
Well, it's one of those weird situations. I mean, you've got John, who's wrong place, wrong time. Obviously, these guys have thought of everything possible in this scenario.
Everything except for him.
Everything except for him. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but there's a cut when they're talking, and this is after the incident with Takagi. He's explaining to everybody, we're in charge. We've left nothing to chance. And that's when it cuts to the elevator with Carl's brother dead in it.
Yeah.
It is an amazing dialogue and cut scene. Just like we talked about in Home Alone with the Kevin and him coming out of the door. Like that's where we're at. Like it couldn't have played any better with the way he says that and the way that elevator opens. And then the shit just hits the fan from that moment forward.
Let's talk about that Takagi moment, because I love how little time Hans spends trying to break him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not interested in trying to torture this guy all night long. You going to give it to me or no? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Blows him away. And what I love there is that they hear John because John is startled by that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like, let's say one of your average 80s heroes that would just be stone cold calm about something, watching somebody just be shot in the face.
Mm-hmm.
He jumps. I mean, he's like a normal person.
Yeah.
When he sees that, it scares the shit out of him because it's scary,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so refreshing.
Well, yes, it is. And I've got the clip and I'm going to play it because I love that exchange between he and Takagi when all of that goes down. I also want to bring up when they're bringing him to this floor to try and get this code out of him. Hans tells you everything about his character in that elevator ride up to this floor. He points out that Takagi has a nice suit and he says, I have two myself. He is a man of superficial things in a way. He is educated. He's got the finer things in life. He's got a classical education. I never really picked up on this before because again, you're kind of told that they're terrorists and you roll with that when you're younger. But the more you watch these movies and pick up on things like that, you can tell from that moment that they're in this for the money.
Oh yeah, totally motivated by greed.
He says very early when he gets to Takagi, he says, "Who said we were terrorists?" I mean, he says that right in the beginning of the movie.
I'm going to go ahead and get into the scene because I think they might say some of this in this, and then we can touch on it from there.
The code, please.
It's useless to you.
The
There's 7
scene has
safeguards on our
got so
vault, and the
much
code key is
tension
only
in
one
it.
of them. You'll never get it open.
Then there's no
Hans
reason not to.
almost knows that he's not going to give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told you.
It just feels like this is like, well, at least I'll try it.
Mm-hmm. And I love this. He looks over at Theo and Carl. Like,
Very nice suit, Mr. Takagi. To be ashamed to ruin it.
like he doesn't want to ruin the suit because it's such a nice suit. It's like, come on,
I'm
man.
going to count to 3. There will not be a 4.
But I love that John is just seeing this from the outside of the room. He can't see anybody.
1, 2, 3.
I don't know it. I'm telling you. Get on the jet to Tokyo and ask the chairman. I'm telling you, you're just going to have to kill me.
Okay.
Okay.
And the squib that goes off there.
We do it the hard way. Tony, see if you can dispose of that. Carl, you better go and check on Heinrich's work.
I like that Carl and Theo have this bet running that if, is he going to tell him the code or isn't he?
Right.
Like it leaves that kind of things open to where it's like, and even Hans looking over at, like, he gives him this smirk, like, will you two shut the fuck up? I'm trying to do business here.
Yeah.
You don't get that with a lot of stuff like now.
Well, it gives you immediately. It tells you nobody's safe.
Yeah.
Right. Especially after they kill Ellis. It's like everyone they've spoken to, they just shoot in the head. They don't care. They're not trying to save lives. They don't care if they have to put somebody down. So it gives you a real level of a threat level there that goes, okay, they're not messing around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as the plot develops, you know that they went in with the intention of killing a lot of people.
Yeah, there was never any intent. They were taking hostages. That's what I love the most is they are they're masquerading as terrorists, knowing that they are just there to rip this place off.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a good guise for this movie, for these villains to hide under. And like, again, like you don't see that level of smarts other than like a James Bond movie or something maybe, but you don't get that with your typical action movies. You usually see that there is a villain, he is looking for this, and this is what he goes after in this movie, which they do here, but it's also like disguised.
Yeah.
This is almost like Ocean's 11, except the bad guys.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're 9 steps ahead of you. They've thought of all the things you're going to do before you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they pull off, this amazing heist.
Right.
Or, they don't in this case, but you see what my point.
But John's really just an onlooker in all of this, and he really doesn't want to get involved. He goes and tries to find a phone. They've cut the phone lines. I like that they give you a sense of brotherly, like sibling rivalry between Carl and his brother with the phone thing. Like you can almost, like you can tell they're brothers and you haven't even been told they are yet,
Yeah. Carl starts cutting the stuff before his brother's done, knowing that his brother will finish before he does it. That's how close they are. It still freaks out the brother, but I forget the brother's name, but and I love, again, every man. John McClane is just trying to call the cops.
Yeah.
He's just wants to get away. He runs away when he gets caught. He doesn't engage. He runs away.
Pulls a fire alarm, tries to get the
attention. Pulls a fire alarm. He does every damn thing he can do to try to get the cops to come.
I forget what the response. Oh, they send out a fire truck, but they tell him it's a false alarm and it turns around. But that's when they send Carl's brother after him. And I love this because, again, like you get a lot about John. He's a cop, but he also, there are rules for policemen. And he goes, that's what my captain keeps telling me. So you can tell he's a cop, but he's also a cop with a chip on his shoulder a little bit.
Well, he just saw someone murdered in cold blood, so he knows these guys aren't messing around. He's gonna kill him because they are going to kill him if he doesn't.
Yeah, I love what he says when he comes into the room. He's like, "I promise I won't hurt you," and then he jumps in and then he starts shooting, like just whatever he has to do to get him out in the open,
And John gets lucky. I mean, he gets lucky in that fight. He almost loses that fight.
Like he basically kills him by accident. Like
they fall down the stairs, and he was the lucky one falling down the stairs. It could have gone either way. He barely survives the first interaction he has.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already beaten and bloodied.
Right.
Already, just for the first thing.
But then you
Talk
start
about being vulnerable.
You start to pick up on how good of a cop he is too by him checking the wallet, going through the bag. He already figures that he's got fake IDs. And I even love that, just like a video game would be, like he tries to take his shoes. It's of all the terrorists in the world, I got to kill one with feet smaller than my sister.
And that guy was like 6'3". I don't know why he had such small feet. That doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I do not know.
That's why he fell down the stairs, I guess. He didn't have...
Top heavy.
Yeah, he's just top heavy.
So I'm wondering, like, well, I guess at this point, like, this guy's dead. They're eventually going to catch on to the fact that I'm in the building. Yeah. So I might as well go ahead and introduce myself.
Yeah, give myself a head start.
And he rides the top of the elevator to do some recon. He starts writing names down, trying to figure out how many people, and that's just so he can tell the authorities.
Yep.
It also gives us as a viewer, like, the layout of this building. If this thing does, I mean, this movie does so much well, but one thing it does is it establishes where our heroes are, or where our heroes and villains are.
The geography is laid out beautifully.
Yeah, I mean,
you have the under construction floors, and you have the finished floors, and you have like the office, and then the roof, and
I love that we come back to these places. It's not like we go level to level and you never see these places again. Like, you're constantly seeing John going back through the same tunnels and the same elevator things. Like, it just
definitely, you're in almost every place more than once. You're on the roof more than once. You're in you're in all the offices more than once.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We were talking about Hans saying, they've left nothing to chance. I like when he's telling the group of people that Takagi is dead, because Mr. Takagi didn't see it that way. So unfortunately, he will not be joining us again for the rest of his life. The
rest of his life.
It's It's a very polite way to put it, I guess. That's the other thing I love about Hans is he remains so polite and gentlemanly throughout all of this. Even when things aren't going to plan, he just seems like he's this calm, cool, collect cucumber, man. Like he's not letting any of this shit get to him. Again, like when they're trying to figure out how they're going to get through the electromagnetic seal in the safe, he's like, I've thought of this, buddy. Don't worry about it. I'm cool. But the only thing he didn't figure was John McClane.
Yep.
And that was the one thing he shouldn't have left a chance, but he could have never known, you know. It's
can't plan for everything.
He finds a radio, gets to the roof, and starts calling the cops. And this is one of my favorite parts of the movie, mainly because it's very vulgar. But when he starts getting on the radio and calling the cops, trying to get them to come to the place, what the lady says and what his retort is great. I'm going to play it.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
No fucking shit, lady. Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Yeah, he says, yeah, come arrest me.
Yeah, just send somebody now. It's funny, but it fits his character, and you can still hear like he's frustrated and he's trying to get something done.
He's scared too. I mean, I think if I have a frustration with this movie, it's clearly a decision they made, but it's how inept law enforcement is.
We'll be talking about that again.
Because this woman you've had multiple calls from this building. This guy is saying, come here now.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I don't care what your protocol is. Obviously, this guy sounds like he's in a dire situation. Maybe you should at least pass it up the line. You know,
which they do. They have Al, the only cop with rational thought in the entire.
I love him.
Yep.
We don't have characters like this in movies anymore. He is an integral part to this movie, yet he physically does very little. Mm-hmm. He is there to be support for the guy in the building and help him get us through this situation. And every character has to have this beat in this moment, and that's what's another great thing about this movie is they give all of that to Al in this movie. But he doesn't have to be an action star. He can sit on the sidelines and play referee or coach and guide us through this and still have a great character development and a great moment in the movie. I don't know if it's that they've made these movies already and that's why newer movies can't accomplish these sort of things. And I don't even know if at the time they were putting this much thought into this movie and this is just how it came out. It's like Jaws. I mean, Jaws had so many problems in production, but I think that's what makes it the movie it is. I think the same thing probably could be said for Die Hard if we knew everything that happened about this. I mean, again, we're dealing with an action star who wasn't an action star, so I think this is another one of those movies that falls into that category of the reason it's so great is probably because it was a troubled production. You know, they had to fight tooth and nail to get this movie, to make this movie what it is.
We're on the roof with the gunfight, and I think I like Carl's weird walk with his gun. He walks like a matador almost. He's like...
Yeah, he's just... Well, this movie has another trope that I loved in the 80s, and especially as a kid, when they're in the elevator going to get John and he's putting the gun together. I always had such a hard on as a kid for like when they would be getting the arsenal together and putting guns together and all this, like the scene in Aliens when Ripley's getting ready to go battle the aliens. Son, that was like, I love that shit in movies. Again, I don't think they do that enough in movies now. This gunfight is going on the roof. And even, I think when Powell looks down the street at the Nakatomi building, when they tell him he needs to go check it out, you can see the gunfire on the roof. This also shows, you know, John doesn't know what he's doing. Like, that's another thing. Like, he's a police officer. He's probably he's probably had to fire his weapon a few times, but he's not like commando, like ex-Navy SEAL, has all this training and knows how to, you know, be tactical.
Yeah, he's winging it,
stuff.
man.
Yeah, he is grasping at straws every turn.
Yeah, and then you get this great elevator shaft set piece.
Yeah.
Which is scary. Like the shot down the shaft looks like a freak, like it gives you that feeling of fear of heights feeling of like, oh shit. And it's so smooth, and that smooth metal all the way down. It's just like there's nothing to grab onto. You're just gonna slide. And the sound design in there of just the squeaking of him trying to grip onto the metal and slide down the metal, all that squeaking,
and having to sacrifice the gun that he has in order to use the strap to get down to wherever he's trying to get to. Obviously something he could use moving forward, but the only way he's going to get away and potentially survive this is to sacrifice it. And I always had a weird, like, I never really understood the comment that he makes about, now I know what a TV dinner feels like.
It's just the foil, man.
Yeah.
I thought that
it's just the foil.
But I think it's because this is the heating system and it's Christmas time.
Yeah, it's probably hot.
I think it's hot in there.
But it's California. It's not that.
Well, I mean, if they're running,
they don't have the heat on that. It's
I think it's the foil. I think it's the foil.
And even if the system wasn't on, I think he'd be hot.
It looks very clean when he's crawling around in it, and then when he eventually gets out, he's very dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, the building is new.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the floors aren't even done yet, so stands to reason it would be pretty clean.
Yeah. But once he gets into the elevator shaft and into the AC ducts, we get our classic.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together. Have a few laughs.
Again, like he knows.
He is a fish out of water.
Yeah. During all of this, you've got Powell coming to scope out the building. He's, it's Christmas Eve. He's already picking up the Twinkies to take home to his wife, allegedly. And
which is singing. So mean of the cashier to be like, sure, they're for your wife.
Well, I think it's the joke with the donuts, though.
Well, yeah, but then he doesn't really let up on it. Like,
I don't think they are for his wife.
It's a fun exchange.
I think they're for his wife.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Because he knows all the ingredients on.
Because he has to pick them up for her all the time because this is her pregnancy craving.
Okay, maybe. He's singing "Let It Snow," another Christmas note,
and he doesn't know the words. Dum da dum delightful. The guy that's at the front desk is this fucking Huey Lewis looking motherfucker.
Yeah.
His acting watching the football game is probably some of the worst in the movie, though.
But it works. It works because he is acting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we all stand on them being able to hear these gunshots in the building from downstairs? Like, do we think it's high up enough to where it would drown out the sound?
Do we know how many floors the building is?
Well, they're at least on the 30. Well, I don't know about the roof, but I mean, they're above the 30th floor throughout most of this. So I don't know how high up that would be in feet or whatever, but I don't know if the sound would carry.
Okay, I just Googled it. There's 35 floors.
Okay.
So if they were on, what were they on the 31st?
They're on the 30th.
Party?
The party's on the 30th.
Yeah,
party's on the 30th.
Never go. Well, they do go below the 30th. The terrorists do, but I think all the action takes place above the 30th floor.
Right. So there's 35 floors. So yeah, it's pretty far away. I don't know. Gunshots are loud. I don't know.
I mean, I hear fireworks go off down the street.
I feel like they hear it.
Yeah, they hear it.
Well, the thing is,
just say they hear it.
While Powell is scoping out the building, there is gunfire happening upstairs. This is when they find out he's on that particular.
But he's on the first floor.
Who?
Powell.
Well, yes, that's what I'm saying.
On the ground, yeah.
So like,
he's much further away than 5 floors.
Yeah.
Right.
He's 35 floors away.
Okay. So,
but yes, you think you'd hear it outside, but he's in his car. Maybe the car.
Yeah.
Blocked it out.
Well, they've sent the guys down to try and stop McClane. They see that he's in this boardroom trying to get the cops' attention. And this whole exchange, the score here is great when the guy's chasing after him on top of the table. He's crawling under the table trying to get away from the guy.
Oh, and when he shoots the guy.
Yeah.
In his legs and crotch area. Good God almighty. Brutal.
It's one of my favorite parts.
So painful looking. Yeah, it's just like, oh God.
And another one of my favorite exchanges here is.
Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate.
Thanks for the advice.
It's great. It's great. And John is, again, he's so fed up with everything that's going on. He does not want to be doing any of this. He decides, okay, I'm going to get this fucker's attention. Throws a dude out the window. I don't know how he could have ever planned that body would hit that car precisely where it does, but
I think he just planned for it to get the guy's attention, not necessarily fall on his car. Because, yeah, there's no way.
At least he would see someone falling out of the building, even if it doesn't hit his car. The thing that gets me is they still could have chalked that up to the joke that the cop makes later is about a stockbroker being depressed. Like, they could have chalked that up to a suicide and maintained that there are not terrorists in the building from that point. But the terrorists just start opening fucking fire from the moment the body falls out the window. But they were counting on all of this happening. It's just happening sooner than they planned.
Yeah.
Another classic line, welcome to the party, pal. Yeah. And I like that he's radioing in as he's driving backwards and they're shooting at him. And then you hear that same radio announcement over the radio in the TV station where we are introduced to William Atherton again, the man, the dude with no dick from Ghostbusters, making another appearance on the show.
Making a Wolfgang Puck reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost famous.
I know that, dude.
I don't know them.
I know her. Haven't you ever heard of that guy? What's his name? That guy who was in that movie that was out last year.
So we've already mentioned a couple, Mary Ellen Trainor. She's already been on our show a few times. Goonies, Monster Squad. She's in Lethal Weapon, which we haven't done yet. She was in Scrooge, which we did a couple episodes ago. We've been discussing having like an award to award people. I'm starting to think she needs it on our show because she's probably made the most appearances in our Almost Famous segments.
Very prolific.
One that I find very interesting is Willem von Homburg. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
So one of the terrorists who has very little speaking parts is Vigo.
Is Vigo
from Ghostbusters 2.
It's Vigo.
So I thought it was fun to see him in there. Has anybody else got any Almost Famous?
Let me see here.
I've got a handful.
Yeah, hit me with another one.
You've got Hart Bachner, who plays Ellis. Surprisingly, I know him mostly from this, but I also loved Supergirl when I was younger. And he was like the love interest of Supergirl in that movie. I forgot he was in that. He was also in Terror Train with Jamie Lee Curtis a few years earlier. I wrote down Bonnie Bedelia, who plays Holly. She's been in a handful of things. She was in a lot of stuff before Die Hard, like little bit parts in TV and bit parts in movies. I wrote her down because I like her in a TV show we used to watch, Parenthood, which was a very good TV show on NBC.
And when we started watching Parenthood, you were like, it's the girl from Die Hard. And I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, but it is.
So, Eric, you got some?
Yeah, I'll throw in Al Leong. Al Leong.
Yes, I have
the
him
guy
on
with the
there
Fu
too.
Manchu. He's in Bill and Ted. He's in Lethal Weapon. He's Big Trouble in Little China.
He was always that.
He's in a lot of action movies.
He's like a natural henchman.
Yeah, he's a stuntman as well. So yeah, he's good at all that kind of stuff. He's an Last Action Hero as well, by McTiernan, which you need to watch, Josh.
I do
get that on the list. Stat. He was in Kung Fu, Escape from L.A.
They Live
4. Lots of stuff.
There's one of the FBI agents is one of the Johnsons. Is from the Goonies.
Robert Davi. Yep, I got him on there.
Yeah, we have 2 Goonies people.
Yep.
In this movie.
Paul Gleason from The Breakfast Club.
Yep.
And Trading Places.
Oh yeah.
You also have the other Agent Johnson, Gran L. Bush. He's not super well known, but if you are watching 80s movies, especially action movies, you'd see him pop up multiple times. Again, Lethal Weapon. He was in The Color Purple, Exorcist 3. He's in Demolition Man and the blockbuster smash Street Fighter.
And my favorite movie, Street Fighter, the movie.
So you got quite a handful of people here. I don't really know who I would like single out in this. You got a handful. Mary Ellen Trainor is always going to be the go-to for me, but
yeah, her. I like Mine as well.
Yeah,
of course, because it's mine and it makes me like it more. But yeah, Al, that guy.
Well, he was on my list too, Eric.
I'm sure he was, Josh. I'm sure you wouldn't have missed that because that dude's been around.
First thing I wrote down was the dude from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
Handful of people and Almost Famous. I don't know if we can really award it to a single person in this one. There's quite a few people that you would have seen throughout the 80s and here.
Let's give it to Mary Ellen.
Yeah, we'll give it to Mary Ellen. I thought it was interesting. At this time, Bruce Willis would have been Almost Famous. So, I mean, he doesn't really deserve to be on this list as we set it up. But at the time, you know, him being a TV star definitely would have been an Almost Famous.
So the cops come. They know there's a problem now, and the cops show up. SWAT shows up, and this movie tells us immediately that all our police and FBI are going to be stupid morons because the SWAT team is running up to the building, and one of the guys gets caught on the rose bush.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Ow!" Just like, "Oh, these guys are idiots. Well, these guys are worthless."
We're jumping ahead a little bit there because I have some stuff to say about the SWAT guys. At this point, John decides to out himself to the terrorists. He's like, fuck it, I got nothing left to lose now. They know I'm here. They know I'm causing problems. So he gets on the radio and lays it out to Hans. Hey, I've been scoping you guys out. I know what's up.
Right. This is where we establish the Western connection of this film. Because this film is in many ways a Western.
Right.
And we're going to straight up call it out. He's going to call himself Roy Rogers.
Yeah. And Hans being, you know, from across the pond and, you know, not being super familiar with the culture that Bruce Willis would be used to. I love that when he's talking to Hans and he's like, so who are you? And he's like, I'm just a monkey in a wrench, pain in the ass. The look, like in the scene where Hans just kind of looks at the radio and he's like, what the hell is this guy talking about? He genuinely is just like, yeah, I could have never planned for this guy to be part of my issue here. And I think at that point, he really realizes I have a problem that we have to take care of or things are going to go south. But during all of this exchange is where we get our classic. I think this would be the thing that these movies are most known for.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Yes.
Which, as much as they go back to it in the series, that the way they use it in this movie is the best. I could have actually been happy if they would have left it in this movie and never went back to it in the sequels.
But I could have been happy if they didn't make any sequels.
Yeah,
I do like 2 and 3, but
yeah.
This franchise went way longer than it should have.
Which tends to be the thing with a lot of movies that became franchises. And yes, I actually really like part 2. I've watched it a lot. I like part 3. Part 3 really didn't even need to be a quote unquote Die Hard movie, in my opinion. You could have made that its own thing.
True.
But we won't get into that here.
No. Part 3 is my second favorite, though. I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I go 1, 3, 2, 4, and then I just don't even watch the other.
Yeah. Well, you bring Jai Courtney in, and I'm out. I mean, I'll put it out. I'll put it out on the internets now. Like, I'm not a fan of Jai Courtney. I don't think I've seen anything with him in it that I was a fan of. So I'm waiting on the dude to impress me, but so far it hasn't happened. But I love from this point forward, well, until we get to our next dilemma, John is very apt to just sit back and let the police take over. He even tells Al, he's like, have at it, buddy.
It's all yours, guys.
I'm done. I'm going to sit here and smoke cigarettes and let you guys come in here and wrangle them up. But like Eric brought up, the police here are incompetent and have their own way of doing things, which are completely something that these people have thought of. They're methodical. John has told them that they have thought of all of this stuff and they're going to be putting themselves in a bad situation, which they do not listen to whatsoever because he could just be a bartender for all they know.
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's not necessarily that these are necessarily bad policemen. It's just that the terrorists have thought of everything. They know everything the cops are going to do, It's just the cop's unwillingness to listen to John when he says they already know, everything.
Right. They know your playbook.
Yeah.
So you can't run the same plays you normally run.
Yeah.
Because they know it's coming.
But they don't know how to do anything else.
I would say that the chief, what's his name? I'll just call him the chief.
Deputy Chief Dwayne T. Robinson.
Oh, yeah. Dwayne. Back when Dwayne was like a stupid name. And now it's like a badass name because of the Rock boy. But,
Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Because they go, oh, yeah, sure, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Can't do that now. Don't try that shit now. But he doesn't want to. Yes, I understand you don't know who's on the other side of the line, but you've been given information that has checked out.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that no one is listening to John except for Al. Al is the only person, and every decision they make, Al is like, nope, that's the wrong decision. Like, why isn't Al the chief? Why isn't Al?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we kind of know, but I mean, I don't know. I'm bothered by how inept the police force is in this movie. We were talking about in the beginning how real this movie feels, how grounded in reality it feels. Everything feels grounded except for the cops and the FBI. They are a caricature. They are goofy.
Well, I would also say that often in situations where you have positions that are politically pointed, you're not always getting the best at the top.
Sure.
True.
Sure. And I'm sure that's the message the movie is trying to give us, is that's how the creators of this movie feel about those people. So yeah, I mean, there's a message here, obviously. I just feel like it's a little too on the nose compared to the rest of the film, which is a little more nuanced, and the particularly Johnson & Johnson are a couple of clowns when they come in. I mean, they are just like ridiculous. They don't want any information. Clearly, anyone coming in from the FBI would want to at least know what the situation. They don't want to hear anything. They walk in, they're like, "Get me a chopper.
Yeah.
Let's go. We'll get 50% of the people. The rest can die. That's fine. I'm fine with that. Blah blah blah. Let's go." And it's just so silly. I mean, I truly love this film, but that always bothers me.
They're the frat boys of the FBI.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we get later. He says it straight out of his own mouth. I mean, you can tell that Dwayne Robinson is up the mayor's ass, and he's afraid of what the mayor is going to do to him after all this goes down. So yeah, you can definitely see there's some political aspects to this that he's kind of judging what he's going to be doing and the way they're going to handle this by. But now the cat's out of the bag. The news is there. Argyle finally finds out that he's in this building that's just been taken over by terrorists. He doesn't know what to do, but now he's aware of the situation. I like that we cut back to him partying in the limo throughout all this. His boss thinks he's in Vegas. And this is where the action in this movie really starts to take a ramp up. We've seen a lot of hand-to-hand combat, individual stuff going on, and this is when the score ramps up. The SWAT guys are coming in, and the way they set up this sequence with, again, the terrorists knowing exactly what the police's playbook is, they're ready to go. You've got Eric's pick for Almost Famous and Huey Lewis wannabe guy downstairs locking everything up. I love that Al, the Asian gentleman terrorist, is eating candy bars while they're waiting for the police to come in.
Yeah, again, they're so methodical and they're so, they're clearly so experienced.
Like they're just waiting for it to happen.
They're not even nervous. Yeah, they're not even nervous. That's how, capable they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, and I also love when they have to wheel the gear over on the dolly thing.
Yeah.
And they drop a piece and,
and they're so prepared that they've brought a fucking rocket launcher with them. Because
and I love that they like riveted into the concrete and just all those little things. They could have just had some guy with a RPG shoot it out the window, but we're going to get some like real like military ordnance stuff. Just again, grounds us in reality, and it feels, they got to set it up. They got to get to the right window. We're not just, it's a lot of movies would skip the detail of that to like set all that up and get it ready and fire it.
Well,
but you know what I'm saying?
And here's where another, like you said, you brought up something about the SWAT team and how the guy gets pricked by the rose bush and is kind of about it.
He's like, ow!
I do kind of like that when they send this SWAT team up, like from the people that are playing them, the actors really kind of construe that these guys are going in and this is their profession, but you can tell there's a sense of nervousness. Like, I mean,
they're a little bumbling. They're a little nervous.
Yeah.
They're While the bad guys are super cool.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just, a little nitpick, but they try to pick the lock. They can't do it because they're morons.
Mm-hmm.
And, why did the guy even try to pick the lock? Can he not pick locks? You either can or you can't, right?
Yeah.
So he comes in and he tries to do it. He goes, I can't do it. And and then they start with the blowtorch.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, this is a glass door, y'all. Just break the glass, right? As soon as the bad guys start shooting at him, all the glass breaks anyway. The doors are open, bud. Just bang it in. Why are you trying to cut through the lock?
You make a very good point. All the while they're setting all of this up, Theo is my favorite part of this. And this really, again, cements how fucking scary this dude is. He's watching surveillance. He's watching every move that the police are making. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, except 4 assholes coming in the southwest corner, 2x2 formation. You can tell as much of a funny guy he seems to be. Like with this, you can tell like he's got some sort of military experience. He's seen something. He's done things. Like he knows how to call this shit out.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like he may not be in the middle of all the action here, but he's someone who has information and he knows what's going on here. So it was,
and he's also excited. He's ready for the action.
Mm-hmm.
He gets thrilled by it, which is not really what you want to be. You don't want to be thrilled by it.
And we skipped over
by death and
right. We skipped over it a little bit when they're actually getting into the vault and Hans is asking him if he can pull this off. He's like, you didn't bring me along for my charming personality. Like this dude knows what's up. And this watch in general really kind of made me change my whole opinion about Theo in this movie. 'Cause I always kind of saw him as a background character, and he is, but he's very scary throughout this movie.
Theo.
And so much so that when the RV comes up and they hit it with the rocket launcher, he's just like, the quarterback is toast. Like he is loving every second of this. That line was actually ad-libbed by him too. But John's in a situation where he can't sit back and let this shit happen anymore. He's watching cops get killed. He's watching bad shit happen. So he's like, well, fuck, I got to do something. At this point, he's got some of the explosives they've been putting up in the building. He decides to drop that shit down an elevator shaft.
What a badass moment.
Having no idea what it was going to do. And I don't even know how that shit worked, because something tells me you have to have some form of detonator for C4. And I don't know what it was there.
Well, those little things that he sticks in there are detonators, but I don't know. You would think you would have some kind of timer. I don't know how to set up C4.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, but I mean, he those little pin things that he sticks in it are the detonators, and I don't know how it works exactly, but he clearly didn't understand the scope of what he was going to get out of it. I mean, he was shocked by how big it was.
Yeah. Again, he's not tactical. He's not a military guy. He has no idea what this is about to do, and just goes for it.
He knows barely enough to make it work, basically.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, stick these in here. He even says like, fuck it, like, because he doesn't know how many to put in there. He just jams it together and throws it down the thing and hopes for the best.
Yeah.
And I love when the big explosion and it blows up basically an entire floor.
Yeah.
And I love the reporter, Richard.
Tell me you got that.
Thornburg.
Yeah, Richard Thornburg.
Yes, Thornburg.
Such a slime ball.
Yeah.
So slimy.
And it's a shock to everybody. It's a shock to the cops. It's a shock to the terrorists. But again, like this should go to show the cops that there's some serious shit going on, because there's enough explosives here to do some damage. So these guys have some arsenal in here, but their reaction to everything that happens is just completely ridiculous. And, you know, John didn't want to have to step in, but he did. And I got a clip I want to play because this scene is absolutely glorious.
Al, do you copy?
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
What was that?
Remember that plastic explosive I told you about?
Yeah?
There you go. Is the building on fire?
No, but it's gonna need a paint job and a shitload of screen doors.
What the hell does that mean? But John's concerned. He's afraid the building's on fire. Like, he might have really just fucked things up.
Spotters say you got two with that blast.
Is that him? Is that him?
Yes,
Give me
sir.
that. Now, you listen to me, mister. I don't know who in the hell you think you are or what you're doing, but you just destroyed a building. Now, we do not want your help. Is that clear? We don't want your help.
I love that he's
got 100
covered in
people
dust
down here, and they're covered with
and
glass.
just haggard as fuck.
Glass? Who gives a shit about glass? Who the fuck is this?
This is Deputy
Again,
Chief of
setting
Police
up what
Dwayne T.
comes
Robinson,
later.
and I am in charge of this
Who gives a shit
situation.
about glass?
Oh, you're in charge. Well, I got some bad news for you, Dwayne. From up here, it doesn't look like you're in charge of jack shit.
You listen to me, you little asshole. I'm gonna...
Asshole? I'm not the one who just got butt fucked on national TV, Dwayne. Now you listen to me, jerk off. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Quit being part of the fucking problem and put the other guy back on.
Also, you can't interrupt someone on a radio.
Yeah, that is a liberty they do take in these movies, for sure. It's like anytime there's these personal conversations going on, later John will have one with Al. Like they're hearing all of this over open radio. They have to be.
Yeah, the way they talk. Yeah.
But from this point on, it's like, you know, we've got a poison pill in the building. Ellis realizes this, and he's like, I'm not going to let this dude take, you know, potentially get me killed. So I'm going to go in here and negotiate my way out of this.
Before we get into Ellis here, we get this, you know, the news anchor that keeps getting caught when the camera runs, you know, that stupid news.
Yeah.
He's like a proto Ron Burgundy, isn't he?
A little bit.
All I could think of was Ron Burgundy whenever he was on, and he's like, what's his name? I forget his name. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Harvey something or other.
Yeah.
I also love the way this movie sets you up. Like, you really get a feel for the cops watching from the outside in and vice versa. You know, you really get a good grasp of how John sees things and how the cops see things. The cops are just seeing all this from the outside, and they don't know what's going on the inside, and vice versa for John. To be fair, John is doing a whole lot more than the fucking police are. But in the conversations between he and Al are another thing that really ground this movie. They start talking about, you know, John starts talking about his kids. Al tells him that his wife's working on their first. You know, there's this whole, you know, nice exchange between the two of them, but then the terrorists find John out. And, you know, they call him John McClane right over the air. And you see in Bruce Willis, the way he acts it, like he genuinely is scared because he thinks they've found Holly.
Right.
And he has no idea what's about to happen, but then he hears Ellis over the radio. Ellis's cockiness is just blows my mind. Like to think that he could talk his way out of this is ridiculous to me.
Well, that's what he does. He talks, he negotiates deals. He thinks he can handle these people like he handles everybody else.
But everything
he's out of his element, and he's also coked up out of his mind at
True.
this point. I mean, he even takes a bump before he goes in there. I mean, he is probably got some false confidence going on.
Yeah. And this, just like the scene from earlier with Takagi, like this is another scene in building tension. We know where this is going to end, but
you've learned it already from Takagi. You know how it's going to end.
Mm-hmm. And even his slyness isn't enough to get past Alan Rickman. I must have missed 60 minutes. What are you saying? Like, he's so great in dealing with Ellis's sliminess, but he's also good at like humoring him. You know, he gives him some of the soda that they're pouring. You know, he tries to be friendly with him a little bit.
I think Hans thinks he might get something of value out of.
Well, this is the first time he's heard any information about this guy who's tearing shit up in the building. He finally has someone in his presence that knows who this guy is and some sort of remnants of what he's capable of.
But he's fully aware of what Ellis is. He knows that Ellis is just a dumbass.
Yeah.
So he's humoring him for the moment to try to get something out of him.
But this is a very good moment of what we were just talking about with the conversations taking place over this open wave radio. Everybody's listening to this conversation. So that personal conversation between John and Al has been happening. Now now everyone's paying attention because there's a hostage involved.
Yeah.
And the cops see it from the point of view of, man, he just let that guy die. And John really, you know, he says it to Al. There's nothing I could do. Like, he had no control over this situation whatsoever. And I like that Ellis almost seems like he got away with it in the end, because John stops talking and he just kind of gives that cocky smile that is Eric's avatar. And then it's just, you know, a repeated Takagi, boom, shot in the head.
Yep.
And the fact that they just sit there and continue to do things while Ellis is there in the chair dead with a hole in his head just makes that scene, like the way they pan over and you just see the top of his head is great. Absolutely great. I love that entire scene from for the way it goes down, even to where they blatantly just drag Ellis's body out into the hallway so everybody can see it. So like they just don't give a fuck.
Yeah, Hans is stone cold, man.
Yeah. But I think from that moment forward, he's radioing Theo, because Theo's back to drilling into the locks, and he's like, "I hope you know what you're doing, because you're gonna need a miracle." It's Christmas, Theo. It's the time of miracles. He's just laughing it up. He's still in that, you know. I love that. That just shows the character of how evil this guy is he's able to maintain this just completely sleek persona and be evil as fuck at the same time.
Yeah, he's likable and fun while also being awful and evil, and that's what makes him such a great villain. He's fun to watch, you know. But
you brought it up earlier. I'm bringing it up again. Al defends John in all this because the Deputy Chief Dwayne T. Robinson's like, he just let that guy die, and Al's like, no, you don't hear what's going on here. It's almost again like we're all in the position of the everyman, and Dwayne's character is big time politics, big picture sort of shit.
Well, he's seeing the black and white, whereas Al sees all the gray. It's happening.
Right. And they find out that the FBI's there. And you see Dwayne kind of tighten up a little bit. And Al looks at him and goes, "Want a breath mint?" And just when they cut over to the original Bill Johnson, when he's just got his arm up on the top of the car, he's resting his head on his hand, like he's just over this whole situation, but he's not going to leave. You know, he tells Dwayne, he's like, "You couldn't drag me away from this. I'm here till the end." And it, again, just such great character building. We get our introduction to Special Agent Johnson and Johnson.
No relation.
No relation. Their banter between one another is great. We haven't talked about it much, but in all of this exchange, John's gotten hold of explosives, and we start to find out what the plan is as this movie goes on, but they need the stuff John has from one of the terrorists he picked off, so Hans goes to check everything out. Originally, there wasn't a whole lot of scenes between John and Hans face to face, but they wanted to have something within the movie that could build that character and give them some screen time. So this was kind of written into that. And I've always had an issue with this scene. As much as I love this movie, I always felt like it was obvious that this was Hans. And it seemed weird to me that John played along with it. But in watching it in the past few times and really looking at it now, John knows from the get-go that this is Hans. Even though he hasn't seen his face, and he puts on this accent, which I'm going to talk about, like, I feel like John knows as soon as he sees Hans, or at least once they start talking to one another, he knows that it's Hans.
I don't know if, I mean, if he doesn't know it's Hans, he never trusts this person he just meets.
Right.
You know, they're both kind of toying with each other here, you know,
Mhm.
kind of like, I don't think that John totally knows right away, but yeah, I mean, he obviously, you know, gives him the gun with no bullets just to see what'll happen, you know?
Well, I picked up on something watching it this time that maybe is a thing, maybe it isn't, but he always, when they figure everything out and Hans points the gun at him, John turns around and oops, like, you know, he gives him the gun without bullets. He mentions to Hans, you know, you should be a fucking actor with that accent. I think John is taking a dig at Hans there. That's the way I read it this time around.
Saying his accent isn't good.
Saying he's like, yeah, you could fool somebody with that accent. I think he was taking a dig at Hans, because even with that accent that Alan Rickman tries to pull off here, there's no way I wouldn't have known that this was the terrorist that I've been talking to on the radio. The inflection in his voice just gives him away.
Maybe the radio would hide some of that, because we got to see him speaking in person, but John has only heard him through a radio.
Well, John has also heard him speak in person. He heard the whole conversation between him and Takagi.
In the elevator, too.
Because he brings it up right then and there, because he says, I'm going to count to 3. And he goes, yeah, like you did with Takagi. So,
yeah, he's got that. Rickman's got that, like, nasally, like, oh, when he's.
You better watch the way you talk about the way Alan Rickman talks. You might get an earful from Jenny.
I love his voice, but it is distinct. Even when he doesn't use the accent, he's still got a sound to his voice that.
But even though John has figured him out and Hans knows the situation, they're at each other's wits. Even though John feels like he's outsmarted Hans at this point, I love that exchange, because he's like, what do you think, I'm fucking stupid? And then the elevator dings and he goes, you were saying? There's just this nice little play between them. This whole action scene is great when, you know, Hans has already gathered what he can of this information. He knows he doesn't have shoes on. He's like, hey, shoot the fucking glass, man. He's if we don't get him, this is at least going to take him out of the game for a little while.
And I love that the gunfight in this this is one of the great gunfights of the film, and in film, I think, is it's so realistic. There's not a lot of jumping around and crazy stuff. They're hiding behind things and they're shooting at each other, and it's just, there's no gun fu going on.
Right.
It's just, you know, yeah, it makes sense. He would lay down on the floor, try to shoot their feet, or you know, find a lane of vision. Like, I don't know. It just feels.
I even love that
nonsense.
When you see him running away from them as they're shooting at him, like in most action movies we would see nowadays, you'd see our action star dive over a desk and crash through a window to get to where they're going to hide and all that. Like, you see John running through this office and he's barely making turns, and he finally like dips into that office to hide. It's not just like, he's not Superman.
Right. I mean, he's flying by the seat of his pants and just hoping for the best. And he barely, I mean, you know, he takes damage through this whole movie.
Mm-hmm. And I think they've got the best of him, but he just barrels through it. And he uses the hockey puck explosive thing. I don't know if it's an explosive or just like a flash of light.
It's like a smoke
bomb. It's like a flashbang.
Yeah. They use it a couple of times, but he uses that as an opportunity to take the fuck off. But what the main thing I love about this shootout scene is how it establishes that Hans is not just some nice suit, money grubbing guy. He will jump in and take place in the action if he has to. He handles himself he dives in and grabs a gun. He starts shooting at stuff, and he knows that, you know, he's got this handicap with not having shoes. So he goes for he is tactical. He's not just the brains of the operation. He's also got some tactical aspects to him. And I love that about this.
I have a question. Do you guys remember, I feel like I remember there being a shot, more footage of the glass in his foot. Is there some other version? Maybe
I don't think so.
I'm watching this and I'm just like, I feel like there's a shot missing here and it's driving me crazy.
It's like the octopus in the Goonie.
Dude, I don't know what the hell.
And
anyway,
when he drags himself into the bathroom and his foot's bleeding, I used to think that was a hell of a lot of blood for a foot injury. But coming from someone who stepped on a nail in the past couple of years, a lot of blood came out of my foot, so it's kind of believable.
It was a lot of blood. It was kind of terrifying.
For something that really didn't hurt very much either. It didn't hurt me that bad, but God, there was a lot of blood.
And that shit is horrific, and it makes you queasy. You know, talking about the nail in the foot from Home Alone.
Yeah.
The glass in the feet on this one. And yeah, when he's dragging his foot and there's just so much blood, that trail of blood. And it's just like, you're in this, fluorescently lit bathroom and there's just blood everywhere. The bathroom was so clean before he got in there. And he's just like, you know what I mean? It's just something about that scene. It's really uncomfortable. And he's so vulnerable at this point. He's just been injured.
He is very vulnerable.
Beaten,
he's
bloody.
Uncomfortable. And like, you also feel like the only thing he has to dress his foot with is his dirty shirt that he's been wearing the whole time. So there's all that aspect to, and even when he radios Al and he starts talking, like he doesn't, at this point, John doesn't know if he's going to make it out of this. Like
John's starting to talk like he's maybe not going to make it.
Right.
And you get Al's story about shooting the kid and everything,
which I think is a good little subplot for the movie. And it gives us something for Al in the end too, that we'll get to. But again, it's something that's humanizing. Like, he made a mistake. That's why he's not this guy who's out playing in the action. He's not trying to get in the building and help John. Like, he's a beat cop at this point. And he has a very good reason to be. He's a desk jockey. Yeah.
I love how this movie, John has like basically 3 different looks through the three acts of the film. He has like the clean undershirt, and then he has the dirty undershirt, and then he has the no shirt for the third act. And it's like, okay,
right,
shirt's off.
Yep,
shirt is off.
It's going down.
Well, it's like he has nothing left. Like, they have stripped him of everything. He's
but he's also
from everywhere.
He's also smart. He's thinking about his situation, and he figures out that why was Hans upstairs? There had to have been a reason. If he's just this terrorist, what was he doing poking around the building? Again, like the fact that he's tactical in this fight, like he can see that Hans is bigger to this picture than just a suit. So he starts trying to figure things out, and he tells Hal, I'm going to go find some stuff out. I'll get back with you later. And this is around the time they've already found out that he's a cop from New York, but his family lives in LA. So the news van goes to see his family, his kids, where they're at there, which plays into something we're going to get into in just a little bit. I want to go ahead and get into some quotes here.
You're going to need a bigger quote.
We've been talking quotes throughout this whole movie, and we've pretty much already laid out on the line the most famous ones, but there are one-liners and jokes throughout this entire movie that have stuck with me throughout my entire life. Some of my favorites, in the beginning, when John and Argyle are talking, and he's trying to get out of John what happened, he goes, "What's the matter? She beat you up?" I like when he's at the computer in the building, and the guy's like, "Yeah, if you need to take a leak, it'll even help you find your zipper." So, do you guys have any? I've got a handful.
Computers,
here,
am I right? Yeah, well, you played a couple of mine already. Welcome to the party, pal. Come out to the coast. Let's see it. Oh, no bullets. I love that one.
What do you think? I'm fucking stupid, huh?
I like when Hans says, "I am an exceptional thief, Mrs. McClane."
Yeah.
It's a nice one.
Which fits the persona they set up. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I like when Chief Dwayne says, "We're going to need some more FBI guys, I guess." And then, of course, I like Happy Trails, Hans.
Yeah.
You got any, Jenny?
He won't be joining us for the rest of his life. And then a couple of real Ellis zingers. Spricken Sie talk.
What does that mean?
because it's Sprechen Sie Deutsch, which is, do you speak German? And so he's trying to say some German, but he doesn't know any.
Yeah, do you speak talk?
Yeah, so he wants to talk.
That's something that's always gone over my head.
And then Hans, Bobby.
I'm your
just
white
so
knight.
inappropriate. Not knowing, can't read the room at all.
Right.
Ellis cannot read the room.
Some other ones I've got here are when Al comes up to the plaza and he sees him driving around the courtyard and he goes, "Who's driving this car, Stevie Wonder?" When all the shit's going down with the RV at the bottom and he decides to dump the C4 in the elevator, he goes over the radio and tells Hans to let him pull back. And he goes, "Well, I'll take it under advisement." And he starts putting the C4 on the chair. He goes, "You take this under advisement, jerkweed." And
jerkweed.
I love when he's talking to Hans and he's like, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm just a fly in the ointment, Hans. Monkey in the wrench. Pain in the ass." And this one fits for where we're currently at, is when Hans and Carl get back and they get things going, and Carl shows how pissed he is that John got away. They're like, the secretary's like, "That man looks really pissed." She's like, "He's still alive. How do you know?" "Only John could drive somebody that crazy."
She knows.
So at this point, Al lets John know that the FBI is calling the shots. John's figured out that Hans had to have been doing something upstairs. And here's another good line is when he's telling John that the FBI's got everything, he goes, "They've got the Universal Terrorist Playbook and they're running it step by step."
Yeah, I mean, God, they're so dumb. So they turn the power off, which is exactly what he wants, and then
exactly what he wanted. Yep.
And this is a fun scene. Like, as much as we hate these enemies, these terrorists, these thieves, whatever, when they open the vault and they're just having fun,
and Ode to Joy's playing, and
and they're just like checking everything out in there. And let's just talk for a minute. The amount of money that they are stealing in this movie is insane.
Yeah.
Like, how many movies does someone steal $600 million or attempt to steal $600 million? It's a massive.
Well, we can talk Die Hard 3 where they steal all of Fort Knox.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, it's just so much. It's just so, and they're just, they get it. They're in. They got what they wanted, you know? And yeah, it's a great moment with the music. And
even when the FBI guys are going back down the hill, they're like, "I bet they're pissing their pants." Yeah, they're pissing their pants because they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
And it is so much money, but it's not enough, because not only do they have less people to share it with at this point, but Han says, by the time they realize anything's happened, we'll be sitting on a beach earning 20%.
Yeah.
So he wants more.
He's already
going to
thinking about the
invest
interest.
it.
Yeah. But at this point, you've got John finally figuring out what all this is about. He figures out this is double cross, and he tries to let Powell know, but Carl intercepts him. This is
he figures out he's going to blow the roof.
Yeah.
He's going to blow the roof with the people on it.
This is all just a ruse. He cares nothing about the hostages. He cares nothing about the demands that he made to the police. He cares. Like, I love the exchange between he and the chief about letting go of the comrades, the Asian Dawn. And Carl even looks at him. He's like, "Asian Dawn? I read about him in Time magazine." Whatever. You know.
Yeah. Pre-internet here, you know, everybody knows everything just from magazines.
Yeah. But we also find out that the FBI is playing into Han's little game, and they're even willing to lose some of the hostages. They're like, "We'll take out 25% of the hostages. We'll save the rest." It's like, this boils down to some really nitty gritty shit here at the end.
Yeah.
But the hand-to-hand combat between Carl and John, if John has already not been through enough, he's got a shot in the arm now from Carl. He's beaten the living shit out of him. Mm-hmm. And it's great. Like, even this whole scene where they're fighting each other, and I think John throws Carl up against this piping and the sound, like the Foley in this part where they're hitting each other and the shots are going off, just sounds so intense. And like they look and sound like they're really beating the living shit out of each other.
Well, it's filmed like a street fight. It's not
Yeah.
filmed like some choreographed Matrix style kung fu fight.
Yeah.
It's filmed. They are just throwing down, and McClane is. I love that he's talking shit the entire time. You motherfucker! It's so you know, like
he said, he says another one of my favorite things, and I had to pull the clip of this, so I'm gonna play it here. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna cook you. I'm gonna fucking eat you. Like that is hardcore as fuck.
Yeah, and there's no martial arts happening here. This is just
Carl throws a couple little roundhouse kicks or something. Like you can tell he's got some kind of training, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's so gritty, you know, it's just a gritty fight, and you know, whoever wants it more is gonna walk out the other side, basically.
Yeah. But while he's fighting Carl, all this is going on. They've made Holly. They figure out because of the fucking news van and William Atherton's character going to their house and interviewing the kids
and pretty much intimidating the housekeeper with the threat of deportation.
Yep.
He is a dick face.
Yeah, he's awful.
Yeah. He's the worst.
He's like
he has no
Jake
dick.
Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I could see him like if he went down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
Just
God, that movie's so fucking good. You got me want to talk about Nightcrawler.
No, go back.
That's great.
But while all this is going on, they find out Holly. So now Hans really knows that he's got something to hold over John's head.
Mrs. McClane.
And quickly, I love when Alan Rickman slides out of the office and shoots his gun in the air. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
He runs out of the office and he just like slides out. And he's like,
yep. It's a very like Staying Alive sort of pose.
Yeah,
but I
like
like when he finds out Holly, and he's like, "Allow us to make your acquaintance." You know, he knows he's got some leverage now, which he has not had this entire movie, basically. So he hangs on to her, but we're gonna come back to Michael Kamen's score here. Like all of this that's going down, the fighting between Carl, the FBI choppers coming in through the city, and the music and the score during all this. The way this all unfolds is, without this music here, I don't know if this movie would be as highly regarded as it is. Like all of this fits together so well and plays off of one another so perfectly. And it builds the tension because we know that you're sending all these hostages to the roof to their deathbed. John can't get away from Carl. He finally, wraps some chains around Carl and slides his ass across the room. We'll get back to that later. I love when he finally sees that the hostages have been taken to the roof. He knows what's going to happen, and he gets to the door, and the guy comes to the door, and all of a sudden he just unloads his gun on him, and all those squibs go off. It's bloody as shit. But
this movie, when it does gore, it does it so well.
Yeah,
and it doesn't beat you over the head with it.
No,
it's just moments of violence happen, and when they happen, they feel real for the most part.
It's realistic when it needs to be. It's not overstated. And it's also not like a movie like Inception or Tenet where people are getting shot left and right and there's no blood to be seen at all. That's something that kind of bothers me about those PG-13 action movies. But yeah, I love the way all of this unfolds. John tries to get everybody back down. He starts shooting in the air to get everybody back downstairs. The FBI doesn't know him from the other terrorists, so they start shooting at him. I'm on your side, you assholes. But this is the infamous, wrap the fire hose around his waist and jump off the side of the building.
Such an awesome idea, just a concept.
Yeah.
And executed so perfectly. And man, when he's like hanging and his feet are on the glass and you're recording him from inside.
And it's all bloody on the inside.
It's just smearing blood on the thing. God damn, that is good shit.
It's so good. And it's something that action movies nowadays would not take the time to put details like that in. Like when his foot is still bloody,
Mm-hmm.
and then, later when you see him and he's limping, nobody would do that nowadays. It would just be totally brushed over.
Well, like he's limping and he's dragging his foot on the floor,
Yeah.
and you can see the smudge of blood that he keeps like sliding his foot.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I mean, when Holly sees him, she's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Because he
like-
is fucked up, you know?
He has been put through he is haggard as fuck, put through the ringer. She cannot believe he's still alive at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just, before we get past every bit of the fire hose is amazing.
Yeah.
The jumping off the roof, the thing sliding, so it's gonna fall. It's not gonna hold. So he's got to get in. He jumps out and he swings, shoots the glass so he can break the glass. Amazing. And then once he's in, it falls off and starts pulling him out, which is just even more. It's so intense.
Yeah.
I even love I think it's like an office divider, like a cubicle divider that gets under the thing, and it kind of creates like a lever action, and his feet are on it.
Yep.
I mean, who thought of that? We should put this thing under it just adds another layer of danger of
Well, you've also got Bruce Willis during all of this, like in our typical action movie we would see nowadays, like they would just throw that thing around their waist and jump off the side of the building without any second thought about it. He is giving us his fucking monologue as he goes through this. He's like, I'll never go into a tall building again. Please don't let me die. I have no idea if I'm going to survive this. Like he is genuinely like just trying to get out of this alive. And even when he finally gets it off of his waist and it falls, like when it cuts to his face, you can see the genuine shock and awe. Like I could have just fell out this fucking window. I could have just dove to my death right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if this movie is missing anything, it's the Captain Phillips scene at the end of Captain Phillips. Like we should have seen John.
His PTSD.
And as he moves through the building and you see the destruction that has happened to this building, because we're going all the way through places he's been already in this movie, and we're seeing that they're demolished now. All the Christmas decorations are on fire and falling over. And
well, yeah, you get that insane rooftop explosion, which is great, and then the drop on the fire hose, which is great, and he survives the fire hose, but then he immediately is having to deal with when he's in that main area with the water feature and he has to jump down there because there's like more explosions.
Yeah, shit
happening.
blowing up around him.
It's so intense. I mean, it's just like go go. From there's a certain, like, the whole third act of this movie is almost entirely action.
Yeah,
and it's just like one thing to another. You know, it's nuts.
And I really love the water feature use here, because in so many action movies, even now, like the diving under the water to avoid the fire or bullets or whatever is a huge thing. And here he has like, maybe a foot of water and he's using it. I just love that part so much.
Yeah, he's hiding in the little fish pond water feature.
And I like it when he gets up and shit's still going off. He's like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's like, I can't win for losing here. But he quickly establishes that he's out of ammo. And I love that we've gotten to this point. Like, he is exhausted every fucking resource he has. He's down to the last
2 bullets left.
2 bullets in his gun. He doesn't even know how many people he's going to have to deal with to get through this. And I think he has a good sense because he knows he's taken out quite a few hostages. So he goes for broke. He goes to where they're holding Holly, and Hans is there. Fucking Huey Lewis is there.
Lewis is there.
Gotta go back in time. And I want to go. We do have a moment where Argyle gets to play an important part of this movie. He gets to take out Theo. And that whole part is so good. Like, I crack up every time because Argyle just charges up on Theo, and Theo, even though he's been so sinister this whole movie, as soon as Argyle runs up to him, he just has this like frightened little boy, like he just scoots back in the van.
Yeah, and then he just one punches Argyle, or Argyle one punches Theo and just knocks him out.
Knocks his ass out. Yeah. And I like that they cut to Argyle after that, and he's shaking his fist, and he's just smiling ear to ear. He loves that he was able to do something to help this situation. Fun fact about the ambulance that comes out of the back of the truck. Originally, when they did all this, the truck they used, there was no way they could fit an ambulance in the back of it. So the continuity of it, God damn it, Eric, it's cemented in me now. I was going to say it earlier when Jenny was talking about the feet, the bloody foot. I was going to say, oh, they actually care about the continuity here. But they did, though. Like, they knew that the truck that the terrorists originally came in on wouldn't have fit an ambulance, so they had to reshoot. But if you look when they're coming out of the truck in the beginning, there's no ambulance in the back of that truck.
Oh, no.
There is a small little flaw there. Also, if you watch when John jumps off of the roof after the FBI shooting at him, if you look at his feet, you can see like shoes that look like feet.
Oh.
Like one of them is actually like too big, and it's like too big for his ankle. So it's like when your shoe would be loose around your ankle. Like if you look at it, you can see it. It gets me every time now because I've noticed it.
Thanks for making us.
Thanks for ruining this movie for me.
So I love this whole showdown. Again, we're back to like the Western, theme of this movie is the showdown with Hans and his hostage. You got
a standoff. Yeah.
Yeah. And Huey Lewis is over here ready to grab his gun and go for it. But Hans has been through so much, and this has been such John has caused so much problems for him. Like he's like, no. I'm taking care of this motherfucker.
Yeah.
I want to say that this is our typical evil person moment of this, where he kind of spills the beans about everything. He tells John, you steal $600, you can disappear. You steal 600 million, they will find you unless they think you're already dead. So smart. And I can't fathom, other than him just being cocky, why he would tell this to John at this point. I guess he has nothing more to lose.
He thinks that he's got him.
Yeah.
He thinks he's got him, and he puts his gun down, so he thinks John's unarmed. Mm-hmm. And then also, I think, they've been having a pissing contest the whole movie, and right. I think he wants to show John just how much smarter than him he is, and kind of rub it in a little bit, which backfires. And
it kind of plays into, I think, John making fun of Hans' accent when Hans says, "What was it you said to me before? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker." Like he can't even say it.
It's not as good.
Right.
The one time that Alan Rickman speaking is not as good as somebody else.
No. But it's great that it turns into this burst of laughter from everybody, but it seems a little unwarranted. Like, would they really let this laughing go on this long?
It is a long laugh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit it's a long laugh. It could have been, because it cuts around to each guy laughing. And then I think the worst part is that Huey Lewis starts to laugh.
Yeah.
I was like, why are you laughing?
Right.
You're not even part of this. Shut up.
You don't know what we're talking about. You haven't seen the shit we've seen today, buddy.
Yeah, he's like the guy who doesn't get the joke, but he's going to laugh anyway.
Right.
Everyone's laughing. He's like, yeah, guys.
But John's a crack shot. I mean, he gets Huey Lewis right between the fucking eyes.
Under the arm, too.
Yeah. And takes a gut shot to Hans. And this whole part is genius. We get the watch that comes back into play.
Yep.
He's holding Holly. But the fact that all of this rides on that watch, and the dilemma that was set up in the beginning of this movie is just ingenious. And Eric, do you know the story about production when Alan Rickman actually shot this?
Yeah, they dropped him on 2 instead of 3 or something like that.
Right.
He wasn't ready to be dropped. Yeah.
So and
it is a great shot, and it holds up. I mean,
it does.
It still looks pretty real.
Yeah, even with the back, I don't know if they did a projection screen or if it was some sort of a digitally enhanced shot they did. It had to have been,
or a composite, or I don't know, because it is weird.
From some of the composites we've seen in the movies we've talked about on this show so far, it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
But
it holds up remarkably well.
I love that they cut to a real shot of a guy falling from that height, though.
Yeah.
It's obvious that they cut to where you don't see him hit the airbag at the bottom, but I love that they throw that sound effect of someone hitting the ground at the last second.
Yeah.
But I actually found an interview with Alan Rickman where they asked him about that. Did they actually drop you on 2 and all of that? And he said he doesn't remember any specifics about them dropping him on 2. He just knows that they were adamant about having him do the fall and getting his response to it. And it was so delightful the way he was talking about it. I could almost not pay attention to what he was saying, but he said they were really concerned about getting a genuine response out of him, but he does not remember if they dropped him on 2 or whatever, but they got the shot they wanted from him.
I like how the bonds start raining down.
Yeah.
Or like snowing.
Mm-hmm. It's not all bonds. I think
probably paper too, because I mean
they are a company. Yeah.
The building did explode a little bit. Well, that's what I was thinking too, and then I was like,
all we see is the bonds. The bonds
paper.
fall over. The bonds fall over
Me
in that
too.
scene because the guy Huey Lewis has them on like a thing, and they fall over. You know,
Yeah.
and they actually show them falling over. So I think at least some of those are bonds.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you think those are $100,000 each raining down over all around the Nakatomi building, it's pretty crazy. But again, we've been hearing "Let It Snow" throughout the movie, and now it's kind of snowing these papers out the.
I kind of picked up on that a little bit too, because it's California. You don't really get snow in California, but then, yeah, like that was one thing as a young person, and even growing up watching this movie, I always thought was a little weird because you can see the paper falling, and you can actually see that there's nothing on some of this paper as it's falling. You can see both sides of it, but to see the symbolism it holds now with it being Christmas time, and I think that's really, really clever.
They come out of the building. We get a big hug between Al and
I love
John.
that they see each other and they know.
They know. They know. It's like, you're my guy.
Yeah.
You're my guy. That's my guy right there.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes my man.
And
they embrace. And I want to give Reginald Vell Johnson. I want to give him a hug.
Yeah.
He looks like he gives a great hug, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. And I like
what a huggable fella. He's like a big teddy bear.
And he's giggling during this, like he's relieved, but like I like when you've got John laughing about it, but you can tell like it's an absolute laugh of like relief.
Yes.
And it's just
yes.
It's like an exhausted laugh, like I'm finally done with this, you know.
And he is done. He's got nothing left at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, he is being basically, he can barely stand.
I can't believe he's still standing.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't for the aesthetic of the scene, like he should be in a wheelchair. Like they've already come to his rescue.
He should be on a damn stretcher.
No, well, I mean,
carried out of the building.
His
yeah.
feet. Like,
yeah.
I'd be like, that's it. I'm not taking one more step. I saved the day. Give me a wheelchair.
Well, I even like when Hans falls out the window and you cut to John and Holly, like finally being able to grasp that this is over. But John is so battered and bloody and like, but he's kissing Holly. I'm almost like, God, it's just so gross. But
Honey,
in that moment, you know, like that's exactly how you would be. Like, you're just thankful that this whole ordeal is over. You know, you've gotten through it alive.
And a nice final moment and a moment for Al. Carl comes out. Al drops him. Saves the day.
I love the sound effect of the gun firing too. Like it's very like powerful sounding, but he lets off like 4 or 5 shots, just boom, boom, boom.
If I remember correctly, the other sound kind of lowers of everything else.
Yeah.
You know, almost like that moment has come to like a freezing point,
mm-hmm.
and you kind of only hear the gunfire.
Yeah.
You know, not all the screams kind of muffle out a little bit.
Right.
This is the one problem that I have with this movie.
This?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Give it to us.
There is no way that Carl is alive for this to happen. He fucking hung him. He did not survive. If you had told me any of the other terrorists had survived, like guy who got his kneecaps blown out, like whoever.
The kid that John just knocked out on the way to confront Hans.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
If you had Theo
the
come
chains
back.
are right, listen, if the chains are right and they were hanging him by his head more than his neck, he might have still been able to breathe.
He did.
Maybe the explosion knocked him loose, so he's only hanging there for.
This was the conversation.
It's too long between when he's hung and when the explosion is for that to have happened. He's
How
dead.
long is it?
He's dead. That's it.
How long is it between when he gets hung and the explosion? Because
the biggest
John
thing-
goes immediately upstairs after that, starts shooting his gun, and then they blow the roof after that.
Well,
right?
no, as the
I mean,
people
we're
are
talking-
coming back down from the roof, they actually
He's still hanging.
He's still hanging there, and then you've
My
got
theory is that the explosion of the roof. You think the explosion would kill him because they just go. That's the roof right there, right?
Yeah, I mean that's right there on the roof. This, as much as I love this movie and will defend it to my dying day, this is the one problematic part of this movie for me, is the Carl sequence seems tacked on to give Al a moment. I'm perfectly fine with him having the moment.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like a final scare in a horror
Yes.
film too.
Yeah.
It should have been somebody else.
But I kind of agree. I don't think Carl made the most sense to be the person that gives us that.
Carl's just the scariest guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it should have been Huey Lewis. Could have given him a nice little out there.
Just change the way you take out Carl. You know,
Yeah.
Don't have him hanging like that.
Yeah.
You know, throw him into something and forget about him.
Yeah.
Have him fall.
Give him the Henry Bowers treatment. Just throw him down a elevator shaft, and you think he's dead, but he's not. You know. I love that Holly gets her moment with Thornburg though, and gives him a nice fucking tap on the chin for going to her house and doing the shit he did.
Punches him in the nose, doesn't she? Because I think in the second movie he says she broke his nose. Right?
Knocked out 2 of his teeth.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
But I even liked that they give him a joke there. Did you get that?
Yeah. And then they play us out with Let It Snow.
Yeah. But you got Argyle finally comes out. And I like that Al's ready to shoot whoever's coming next, but John's like, no, he's with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Al's ready to shoot anyone and everyone now
Yeah.
that he's got his gun warmed up again. He's ready to fire.
Right. And that, I mean, they drive away in the limo, kissy smoochy, hopefully to the hospital and not to her house to just sleep it off, because dude needs some medical attention.
He needs to go to the hospital.
He needs some stitches here and there.
Some therapy. Dude would not be right after all this goes down. But I mean, it ends perfectly. I mean, we don't need anything more than this. Just the fact that they survived.
Yeah, we don't need a big long prologue.
Yeah.
At the end of the film.
That's another thing movies go into nowadays is very long. Like I'm starting to see a lot of the movies we're watching now, and I've even been going back and watching older movies just for fun. And the 80s and early 90s and whatnot were not considered, they were not concerned with giving us a good wrap up.
Well, they would end on a high note a lot.
Yeah.
It would be right when things go well and boom, and a lot of them would do the old freeze frame, and that's it. It's over, and you end feeling great.
Yep.
But yeah, everyone wants to know how every character ends up and where they go and all this kind of stuff.
And I don't know if you feel great at the end of this movie, but you definitely feel a sense of relief that this is this is over.
I feel great
They
at
got
the end
through
of this
it.
movie.
Yeah. But I mean, that's Die Hard, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we have talked about so much, and there's probably so much more to talk about with this movie. We could get into more. I'm sure we'll talk about the sequels as we move forward in this show and how that kind of went off the rails a bit. But this movie just, what can we say? I mean, we're going to go ahead and get into our good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of bad and ugly, but let's find out.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
Why? I'll start as usual. Good for me is direction from McTiernan. I think he directed the hell out of this movie. Action in this movie is ridiculously good. I don't think this movie would be what it is without Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis. Plain and simple. Alan Rickman is probably one of, if not the best villain ever. And I really think this movie has something with Reginald VelJohnson too. Reginald VelJohnson is a great a great subplot character for this movie. And I think without him, this movie would probably suffer. The bad for me, and we've been talking about it the whole show, the cops not listening to anybody and just being ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I also, ugly is Carl's last scare. I would say that's one thing about this movie that does kind of bother me and seems a little tacked on, is Carl's last scare thing. Jenny, you're good, the bad, and the ugly?
The good is Alan. Just, I love Alan Rickman so much. This was not the first thing that I saw him in. And then, like, to go back to a younger Alan Rickman and just, like, he, like, from the minute he speaks, it's just, I'm in.
And the thing is, I don't think he did a whole lot between this and other things. Like, I think there was a good gap between him doing this movie and really getting into something else that gave him a bigger Hollywood name.
Well, he was in Prince of Thieves in 91. So that was a pretty big movie.
That's probably the first movie I saw.
And a
him in.
very different character too. Like, he is over the top in that one.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And the bad for me is Carl's last scare. I don't believe it. I think he's dead. Way before this. Sorry. One flaw.
Eric?
That's okay. Okay, so my good is the whole fire hose off the roof sequence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's arguably, it's just, okay. It's great. The bad is, again, the dumb cops, dumb FBI guys. They're worthless. I mean, how do they even exist in this world? Because they're so worthless. And then the ugly is when Argyle looks in the rearview mirror and sees the bear and he goes, "Shut up."
I actually kind of like that moment.
I love Argyle. I love when he's talking to his girlfriend or somebody, he's talking to some girl and hanging out, listening to music, drinking the booze. And I love all that. I love Argyle, but
yeah,
that little corny moment with the bear, that's ugly.
All right, guys. I mean, not a whole lot more to say. I mean, we probably could talk about this for hours and hours more, but I mean, I think we've hit all the beats that we need to. This is, again, we've said it multiple times already, one of the best movies ever made, especially for people in our generation. It's so funny. I've been poking around on social media lately, and I've been a little shocked to see how many people I've seen on some of my movie groups and stuff that I follow on Facebook and Instagram that say they haven't seen Die Hard. And it just seems so foreign to me to not have seen Die Hard, but I am getting older and younger people are watching more movies now. So I guess I better get used to people not seeing the movies that I think are classics. But this movie, like Eric said, with his kids watching it with him, I think you could be any age and this movie should blow your mind. I mean, it's one of the smartest action movies ever. I mean, every little thing about it was thought out to a T, much like the people, robbing Nakatomi Plaza. I mean, aside from Carl, Carl's scared at the end, but yeah, I mean, this is you. I'm not even going to say buy it, rent it, forget it, because this is absolutely a must-have in your collection.
It's a masterpiece.
If you love movies, if you respect action, if you just anything, like, this is a movie that needs to be in your collection. It's just one of those kind of movies. But that'll do it for our conversation about Die Hard. I do want to bring up a couple little things in-house here. We're moving into 2021. We're going to start changing up things a little bit as far as our selection of movies goes. We've kind of stuck to a little bit of a schedule here for a little while. Now we're going to get into a little more fun with this. We've each picked a handful of movies and we're going to start randomizing that. Basically, I'm going to kind of play it into the end of the shows moving forward. We're going to have a roulette wheel. We're going to spin it, and whatever movie we pick at the end is the movie we're watching for the week, and we're checking it out. Whether we've seen it, whether we've not seen it, popular, unpopular, it's going to be all kinds of stuff all over the place. We're going to try and keep it in the theme of rental store days as best as possible, but we are definitely going to be jumping from oldies to 90s to early 2000s, whenever you would have been in a video store looking for movies. We're going to try and keep it within that grasp. But we would also like to do a few new things in the new year. We want to have some general, just movie talk shows for everybody, so we can just talk about movies in general, some cooler talk sort of stuff, and maybe even bring in a newer movie review or two or something like that. We plan on continuing with the horror section once Jason's feeling better. Obviously, he's not back on the show tonight with us, but we think he'll be back with us next week. And we'll continue to let you know how we're going to evolve the show moving forward. And we're very excited moving into 2021 about how we're going to start doing the show and some different things we're going to start doing.
Looking forward to it.
Good things.
So next week we're coming back with it being the cold season. We wanted to get something that would make us feel a little chilly in our bones and scare us a little bit. So we're talking John Carpenter's The Thing.
The Thing.
So I think we're going to have a great conversation about this one. It is one of my favorites, one of Eric's favorites. I'm sure Jason has a lot of good things to say about it. I'm not quite sure how Jenny feels about it.
I like it quite a bit.
So
she likes it.
It'll be a fun conversation with one of our favorite directors who we'll be talking about a lot moving forward as well. So that's going to do it for this episode of VHS Files. Until next week, be kind, rewind. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the VHS Files Podcast.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe and drop us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcast.
It was fun.
Send your questions, comments, and movie suggestions to vhsfilespodcast@gmail.com.
You sick fucks, you've seen one too many movies.
Don't you blame the movies!
Follow us on all social media outlets at VHS Files Podcast.
Movies don't create psychos.
Check out our YouTube channel for more content.
Movies make psychos more creative.
Thanks for listening. ASMR. Excuse me.
That's what I love most.
Californians.
Oh no.